The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
What is up, my downers? Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web, The System is Down. My name is Dan Smatz. I am your host, and on today's episode, I'm sure you've deduced by now from the title, we had three different guys from three different walks of life who came to three different conclusions politically, and we just got together and had a civil discussion about a lot of hot-button topics. We had a Republican, a Democrat, and a Libertarian, and with all these issues, spoiler alert, there was no triggering or no name-calling, no bickering back and forth, just civil discussion, the way that I think that humans were meant to converse with each other. So I know that I've been doing a lot of two-part episodes, and this one wasn't really intended to be, but the problem is I have guests on that I really enjoy talking to and really like getting their insight on things. So when I set out to record an hour or an hour and a half, it seems to always end up being about 2 hours or 3 hours or 5 hours in some cases. In those circumstances, I cut it down to half and try to make it a more digestible length for you guys. So this one is going to be another two-parter because we ended up talking for about 2 hours. And I would say the second half may even be more interesting and relatable than the first half, but the first half is fantastic. So that is what's going to happen now. And one thing I should point out is in this episode, Ryan, the Democrat in the discussion, his microphone is a little bit fuzzy and there's a little bit of background noise, so it gets a little bit of interference at times, but it's passable, and he makes a lot of fantastic points, so bear through that, and sorry for the audio quality, but really enjoyed this discussion. I hope you guys do too. I don't have a whole lot to say here at the beginning except for I think you're really going to enjoy it, and I freaking loved it. So all that said, and without further ado, let's get weird. My guests today are many white males from different walks of life.
Diversity.
This is going to be a fun one. We've got my friend from high school who I haven't seen before today in 11 years, Jon Schweppe, with us. John, how's it going?
Good, man. How's it going?
Great. John, how do you classify yourself in this?
I think it's probably accurate to say I'm a social conservative. That's what I would probably classify as, even though that's a pejorative.
He's a Republican. All right. I also have on Ryan Beckenbaugh, a guy who I've known for a very long time and don't get to talk to nearly enough. Ryan, what's up?
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
3 words or less.
Dan, I am just fantastic. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to see what sort of strides we can make on the interwebs.
Ryan, you are... What would you classify yourself as in this this three-way that we've got going on?
Let's get weird. Well then, I'm probably the most liberal one here, although I'm not the sort to call for Ann Coulter to be banned from campuses. I'm also an attorney, so I feel pretty strongly about like the First Amendment, constitutional issues, stuff like that. So while I do think that I probably have like personal views that are somewhat left, I do recognize that the current state of things are a bit chaotic.
Democrat. Okay, Mark. Now I've also got. For the first time
I caucused for Bernie, for what that's worth.
We'll get there.
Hindsight is 20/20.
We'll let you try and justify your stance. I also have with this Marc Clair from the Lions of Liberty podcast. Mark, how's it going?
Good, Dan. How are things?
Things are well. Good answer.
Things are well.
Mark,
what label are you going to try to peg on me after my description where I try to avoid labels like the last two?
A Nazi, probably.
All right, I'll go with it. It wouldn't be the first time in the last couple weeks I've been called a Nazi, so
there you
that's
go.
Cool.
Ouch.
Yeah, probably just because of your anti-Jewish leanings, right?
Oh yeah, big time. Ever since my bar mitzvah at the age of 13, it's been about a 25 or so downslide right into Nazism. I don't know how it happened, but slippery slope indeed.
That's what I was going for.
Starts by clicking on Breitbart by accident. Next thing you know, Heil's away.
I love it. If you couldn't tell, this is going to be the most laid-back discussion / debate. I wouldn't even really call it a debate. I am a libertarian. Mark helped in my conversion from right-left politics, and so glad to have him here actually representing the movement in a way that I am unable to do. So I will be moderating this non-debate and discussion from a very unbiased standpoint, and I will never give any opinion of my own. I guarantee that. So this is just a chat between 3 different guys who have different backgrounds, different upbringings, and have come to different conclusions in life. And there will be minimal name calling.
I'm glad you said that, because I wouldn't want to just say none. Because,
Yeah, I'm not making any guarantees.
You don't want to constrict the rules too much.
I would be willing to guess that I will be the one if there is somebody name calling, so I can't put a too hard stance on it, yes. But everybody knows
it really is supremely unproductive, though, to just make lame straw mans and then call your...
unproductive?
Amen.
It really is, though. It's just like,
Which is 99% of Facebook and social media conversations.
Yep.
99.9.
Yes. So, I mean, if you guys, I've got some topics here that we can chat about. If you guys have anything that you want to bring up or want to take it down a rabbit trail, I'm all for it. We don't hold a tight ship around here, if you haven't figured that out yet. So,
well, not to hijack things, but I think it might help maybe all of us if we have like more of an idea of like maybe how we all got to where we are. Obviously, not maybe the full tale from day one, but maybe a brief synopsis kind of
well, that's where I was going next.
Just an idea.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I should rephrase that. So to hijack your show.
Absolutely. All right. Well, yeah, we can start with, I'll just say I was raised hardcore Republican, didn't really care about politics until the year before this last election and started digging into Republican debates and that type of thing, and watched all the Democratic debates and dug into everything that I could, and then found out, hey, there's these other groups too, and watched all the Libertarian debates, and like, hey, these guys are actually making some sense.
You're like, wait, no seatbelts? In.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll start with you, John. You were raised in the same town as me in Republican Aledo, Illinois.
Yep.
And very small country town here.
Yep.
So you stuck to your guns for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, I went to college at a really liberal school nearby. I wouldn't say I was like super involved in politics there. I wanted to make a reputable living in business or economics or something like that, and then I got drawn into it, man. Started working on congressional campaigns and did a bunch of campaign work, and then I moved out to D.C. To work for a think tank in 2014. And so I've been doing that ever since. But, yeah, I didn't mean to get involved in politics, I swear. It was an accident.
Sure.
But here I am, so.
What pushed you to become more involved in politics?
Well, can I tell the truth first?
Sure. That's a good place to start.
No, it was actually it was a really cool thing. I had an internship at the end of my senior year of college. I think it was like Scottrade or one of those financial places, and everything was good to go. And then I showed up on day one, and everything was supposed to be good. And they were like, "Oh, we aren't doing an internship program this year." So I like went back to school, and I'm like, "Oh man, like, yeah, like what happened here?" And so I went back, and I'm like, "Am I gonna fail? Like, am I not gonna graduate college now?" And they were like, "Okay, we'll get you an internship real quick. Here's a list of." Like the rejects, I guess. and like right towards the top was the Bobby Schilling for Congress campaign. He was running for Congress here in 2010. He was a huge underdog. And I was like, that might be fun. So I did that. So
they're like, your options are sell your soul to the Republican Party, and that's about it.
Or not graduate.
Yeah, or not graduate. No. But yeah, so I did that and really loved what we were doing and believed in what we were doing. And he won, which was like kind of a America the Beer. I love that. It was kind of a miracle out of left field that I don't think most people expected. And I just kept going with it. And I don't know what I'd be doing now if I wasn't doing it. I really do love it.
Right on.
Although I hate it a lot, to be fair.
Don't know what you'd be doing. You could be doing the same thing for the Libertarian Party. All right, next guy.
Is there a Libertarian Party?
Shut up.
Okay, just checking.
We'll get to Mark in a second. All right, Ryan, let's pass it to you. Give me your background.
What was the question? Sorry.
It's all right. Basically, your background, what got you interested at all in politics, and maybe a little bit of your upbringing on what brought you to the point that you are now.
So I went to a very, very, very conservative, literally fundamentalist Lutheran elementary school from like preschool to 8th grade. We were taught things like Adam and Eve literally happened, that sort of stuff. You guys hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You were making faces at him, and I wasn't sure.
I said Lutherans to him.
Well, I think we were different Lutherans. So was that like Missouri Synod?
Yes, Missouri Synod, not ELCA.
Right.
So like really hard. John knows what's up.
Yeah.
So that definitely. I can't imagine that didn't have an impact on me. I went to a Catholic high school where I knew more about the Bible than all my Catholic schoolmates. I went to a University of Iowa, super liberal college. Studied English. Went to law school. Am here now, doing the law thing. What informed me? I suppose I'm a pretty empathetic person. I think. And that's not to say that my counterparts aren't.
Sure. No.
I don't know. I took some philosophy classes. I waded into libertarianism before, and it just didn't seem to have the answers that I thought were appropriate for things. I think certainly some of its elements are admirable and great.
Sure.
Sometimes I feel like a conservative when I'm defending people charged with crimes, which is a little bit goofy because I think people normally associate like us defense attorneys as like liberal, etc.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm checking the government's power. I'm standing up for people's rights. It's a huge underdog fight. It's super fun. What got me into politics? I don't know. I wasn't real, like my heart wasn't really in it in 2012. But this last election, I definitely was a big fan of Bernie. I was pretty anti-Hillary, although I didn't vocalize it that much. I was, and probably still am, somewhat anti-Trump, only to the extent that I just wish that they could conduct themselves with a bit more sophistication. But I don't know. I can disagree with policy people all the time, but it's just when I feel people, I like to demand a certain amount of sophistication and sincerity, and sometimes I find that lacking from our current president. But
yeah, I can see that.
Nothing like I didn't have a huge life-defining moment. I'm the sort of guy who like when he sees a 67-year-old lady waiting tables at the local village inn because she has to. I kind of feel like, man, once you hit like 65, 67.
Just
die.
Just die.
I kind of feel like, you know what? You've done your time on Earth. You either suffered long enough or you worked hard long enough where we should probably just like take care of you for the rest of your life.
Gotcha.
So like that's just kind of my that sort of sense of that sort of like empathy and kind of wanting to just take care of people, I think.
Sure. From like an emotional standpoint.
Politics.
Yeah, I got you. For sure. Mark, how about you? Give us your background, give us where you're at, where you came from, and all that fun stuff.
Where I'm at. Well, I guess I was raised in I don't say I was raised as a Republican, but I was raised in a household where my parents were Republicans, or my dad was a Republican.
Is it like
my mom was
Christian
there too.
children are born into Christian families, so they're Christians? Same goes for Republicans?
Yeah, I guess so. And I was raised by a Jewish family, so I guess I'm Jewish too. But neither of those things are all that true in reality now. I think I was always kind of political in the sense that I was curious. Like my dad used to listen to talk radio in the car, AM radio, and mostly conservative talk radio because that's what Republicans listen to. Right. But I would also often find myself just questioning things like, why did that guy say that? Or why should there even be a law about this thing? Even before I was thinking about associating with anything politically. So I think I was always politically curious in that sense.
Sure.
And then I guess the first time I actually thought about politics in an electoral sense was 2000. I was only 18 years old. Try not to hold it against me, but I did vote for George. I was actually 20 years old. I voted for George Bush, and that because for no other reason other than Republicans were like better, and like my dad said so. So
Yeah, I did the
that's
same.
it.
So no judgment.
Yeah,
here.
there's no deep thought behind this, and it was only shortly there.
I'm a little younger, so McCain.
Right.
I can still
The
back and say
translation.
that
I voted against him. I felt really good about it.
Yeah, but I floated away from that. I think in college I kind of went through a very hardcore, like I might almost say socialist phase for about 6 months. I think a lot of that was a rejection of.
Right.
It was really the. After 9/11 is when I kind of woke up to an extent that I became more politically aware because I saw the news. I saw this thing happen on the news. I saw people talking about, now we're going to go invade Afghanistan. And I started to think, like, I have no idea where Afghanistan is or what goes on there, but where a lot of not my money, I didn't make money at the time, but, taxpayer money is about to be spent to go send a bunch of bombs and soldiers over there because they attacked this building in New York City. And I didn't understand it at all. And I knew that now, like before, whereas politics was sort of a TV show, now it was actually literal life and death. Like I saw people die on television,
right.
And now more people are going to go die in this other place halfway around the world. So I think that got me to really just think about what is going on,
Yeah.
So initially that did turn into a strong anti-war stance, which I still have to this day. But it became more of a rejection of, okay, George Bush is launching a war. George Bush is Republican. I'm against that. I must be a Democrat now because that's the opposite.
Right.
So I have to be this other thing. So I think I went through a period where I was strongly the other way and started adopting all those positions just because that seemed to me, if the other thing was wrong now, this other thing must be right. And somewhere in that period, I met Howie Snowden, who I know Dan is familiar with from the podcast.
Right.
He actually was a congressional page in college, and we became, or not in college, when he was in high school, we became good friends in college. He told me about this guy, Ron Paul, this congressman that he used to like hang out with sometimes in his office when he was a page, and this guy would like just talk to him about politics and liberty. I was like, what? He used to talk to this congressman? That's weird. But I looked the guy up and started reading his articles, and this is like a long time ago, well before he ran for president in the year 2000. I was just impressed by them because he was a Republican, but most of the articles were criticizing the Republicans. So I was really kind of confused by the whole thing. It made me realize, wait a minute, you can actually think about things in a way other than one side good, one side bad.
Right.
So I think that sort of led me down the path. I don't know if it led me directly to libertarianism at the time. Looking back, that was obviously where it started.
Yeah.
It was only in probably 2007, 2008, where Ron Paul ran for president, that I started to get really hyper-political. He really inspired me, seeing a lot of the stuff he would say in the debate. Even if I didn't fully agree with it or knew I agreed with it at the time, I just saw it as very brave. For him to say that 9/11 was anything other than a battle of good versus evil, and to stand up for it when he was asked to recall that statement by Rudy Giuliani, because he's never heard that before, that terrorists might get angry when we drop bombs on their families. And he wouldn't back down. And even aside from what he was saying, just the fact that he wouldn't back down from a stance that you just literally never heard on television. I mean, now you actually hear some criticism of wars on TV. You literally did not hear that before, as far as I could tell. So that really is what made me get more involved in talking about politics openly. It used to be just something I thought about in my head, to talking about it with friends, which, of course, eventually, after many years and another whole election cycle, led to Lions of Liberty and me starting this libertarian podcast here. So that's the Cliff Notes version, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah.
A lot of twists and turns along the way.
I'd like to make an amendment to mine. Mark mentioned the word like skeptic. I think that probably pretty adequately describes me generally.
Sure.
And I share a lot of respect for Ron Paul, and I think that you're definitely right that I think that he definitely was brave to. I mean, from 2001 to like 2006 and 7, there really wasn't much dissent, especially on TV. I mean, it was
you're with us, you're
everybody,
against us, and everybody seemed to be on the same page when it came to that. Including it was bipartisan.
100%, yeah, 100%. And there was barely any against even. It was. I mean, if you were against, you were a terrorist sympathizer. It was. I mean, it was quite. We forget how crazy it was from like 2001 to 2004 when like literally everyone was like, yeah, let's go some shit up.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that are younger than us that are maybe like 6 or 7 years younger than me that grew up where an anti-war sentiment existed in the world, and I'm glad it does in this country at least. It really didn't from just after 9/11. I know there were anti-war movements obviously in the 60s and 70s. It really after 9/11 did not exist until the Iraq War. There started to be some sort of resistance around then, but for a few years there, I mean, there was zero. And even the Iraq War, it took a couple of years of getting into that before any kind of resistance started to build up. It was still part of the patriotic 9/11 sweep in the beginning.
For sure. The other amendment, when John mentioned he's a social conservative, that was pretty surprising, I thought. For what it's worth, I am gay. Doesn't really inform that much of my politics, I don't think. But that might be fun to talk about later.
Hey, yeah, sounds good, man.
I'm down. Okay, so we're getting into like war and stuff like that for the most part. Let's go there. Let's go to foreign policy. I don't want to keep like going in a circle here. If somebody's got something they want to throw out there,
well,
floor is yours.
I was thinking this during.
And you start first. That's going in the circle.
Here we go. No, one of the most amazing things, you guys are mentioning it with the anti-war sentiment, and if you look at the Republican Party base now, it's actually kind of amazing. Like it's a very anti-war base. Now I know some people might say that's because with President Obama in charge, it was more anti-Obama than it was anti-war. But I mean, it's still a pretty mainstream thing. I mean, Donald Trump during the debates bashed President Bush's war in Iraq and got claps, and people agreed with him. And I just think that's a really amazing shift in public opinion that you have conservatives.
And Ron Paul got booed for saying the same stuff.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, just in a few years, we went from, 90, 95% among the Republican base support for, war everywhere. And I was actually anti-Iraq as well. Like it was a minority opinion, and then it has completely turned. And I think, I mean, as somebody who doesn't want to be involved in literally every foreign conflict ever, I think that's a really good thing.
Do you think that we have any sort of moral responsibility to ease the suffering of other humans when their governments are pretty clearly, and let's just assume that their governments are pretty clearly being horrible to them.
Right.
Like let's say that I presented evidence to you that pretty substantially convinced you that that Syria was using chemical weapons against its people. Do we have any moral obligation as a state to intervene?
I think that. So I'm really a believer in just war theory. So it's really you have to be able to, number one, say that you can win the battle. Number two, know exactly who you're fighting against and who the enemy is. So my issue with, say, Syria, for example, is that there's so many sides, and it's so unclear what we're doing, and it hasn't even been sold to the American people clearly as what we're doing. That's a situation where, yes, you see the horrible images from Aleppo, guys, Aleppo.
What is Aleppo?
And you see those horrible images and you say, yeah, we got to go in there and do something. But when you don't know which side we're on, where's Assad, where's ISIS? I read an article on Vox. Wow, I sound like a liberal East Coaster. But I read an article on Vox, and
we're shattering stereotypes here.
But Ezra Klein had this really great breakdown about how there's 4 different sides on the Syrian conflict. I don't think the American people are informed on that, and there has been no effort to inform them on that. So I take real issue with getting involved in these foreign policy entanglements when there's not a clear are we on the right side.
If we were, would you support it?
Yeah, so if it was
if
it was something explicit, I'm not anti-war in every instance. So let's say, for example, and we might get to this later, but let's say it was World War II, defeating the Nazis. Yes, we should definitely get involved and destroy the Nazis. But
you're just throwing that out there so nobody claims that you're a Nazi.
I'm already trolling. I apologize.
Yes, you're just throwing that out there so nobody calls you a Nazi in this.
Yeah, I'm virtue signaling to get it out of the way.
But hold on a sec. But we didn't get involved because they were engaging in the Holocaust. We got involved because they were threatening our sovereignty.
No, that is true. But that same argument is, you look at all of the...
You can argue we somewhat enabled the Holocaust to an extent, too. But we can go down a lot of historical rabbit holes with this kind of stuff, so...
Yep, save it for the conspiracy side. All right.
Isn't it all one side on your show, though? I thought this is where this stuff all comes together in one bowl. We just mush it up and...
It eventually gets back to it.
No, but Ryan, you make a really...
The second segment...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say the second segment is the conspiracy segment.
Yeah, we'll definitely... Flat Earth.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because, you know, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay.
No, but Ryan, you make a good point. Like, I mean, why don't we get involved in all of these genocides in Africa, right? Like, have we gotten involved militarily in a single African war? We haven't. So I think.
I mean, if we're going to go humanitarian, there's no
Libya is in
Africa.
Okay, Libya. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That was really just being a smug asshole. I'm so sorry.
But I mean, just generally, like totally. I don't think we can get involved in every single thing. I don't think it's responsible to do so. But it is. I understand like the argument. It's not like a clear black and white thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think this actually is a very difficult foreign policy is a very difficult issue from a libertarian's perspective because, you know, to me, when you ask the question, do human beings have a quote unquote moral obligation to say stop injustice where they see it as a general concept? I say yes, absolutely. Like to make it more simple, let's just say I'm walking down the street, I see an old lady get robbed and beaten by a man.
Typical in California.
Yes, all the time. I do feel like I have an obligation to intervene. Right? I mean, it doesn't mean I have to. It doesn't mean I should be jailed if I decide not to. Maybe the guy's big and he might kill me, and I'm just too afraid to intervene. So while I do think I should intervene, whether I do or not, I don't think that's really something that's up to other people to decide or to punish me with violence with. But I do think when we obviously I know that's simple, and when we extrapolate it to foreign policy, it does become a lot more difficult because we have to ask ourselves questions like, I think first of all, what you were saying about Syria. A lot of times we don't even have information of what's going on over there. We have, and I don't even mean Syria in general. I mean anywhere. We have what's pumped out by certain intelligence agencies, what's pumped out by the news media, and that's what informs the opinions of the American people. I'm not saying it's all lies. I'm not saying it's all truth. The fact of the matter is it's probably somewhere, it's probably a mix of all these things, you know? So it's very difficult to actually be able to assess what's going on. But the way I think about it is, you know, do you have the right to, like, you got to clean up your own house first to sort of reference Jordan Peterson, what he tells the people who are telling everybody in the world what to do while they don't have a job and you know, can barely form a thought. You have to clean up your own house. And when I look at the United States House, I look at a country where we jail people for owning plants, where the U.S. government violates the rights of American citizens every day of the week. And I don't think we under that sort of circumstance can really trust that same sort of group of people, group of politicians to be deciding exactly where we should be dropping large bombs and munitions that ultimately and always end up landing and killing civilians, killing people, which ends up creating a lot more terrorism and, you know, a lot more hatred and worldwide against the United States. So while I thoroughly think in a different world where the United States didn't go willy-nilly all over the world in basically in starting wars in Iraq, basically almost every war of the last 50 years or so, I can't really claim many would be defensive wars. That really disintegrates our ability to use quote-unquote soft power to wag that big stick at other countries that might be violating the rights of their citizens without actually having to use the force. Now, at this point, we've basically put the rest of the world in a position where they have to arm up and load up because we've taught them that's what you have to do, because if you cross us, we're going to come after you. You know, Gaddafi surrendered his weapons, and we turned around and raped him in the street. So what message does that send to other countries like North Korea? It says, you better arm up, and you better not make a deal with us, because we're going to turn on you. So I know I'm going a little bit all over the place here, but that's kind of how I roll. It's something I warned Dan about before the show.
It's all right.
And I was, maybe a libertarian could explain to me, I guess. So I mean, we seem to agree that, like, as individual human beings, like, we do feel some sort of like pull to help the person up who just dropped their paper bag of oranges, which are now strolling along the street and they tripped. Like, you feel that sort of like solidarity. But like when we all, our state, like how much of our own personal like moral obligations go through our state then? You know what I mean? Like the question, because like I initially asked, does our state have a moral obligation?
Okay.
Like we may all like we all see the picture. Like we all saw the picture of the boy in the ambulance in Aleppo, and like everyone was like, "Fuck, that sucks. Like that is horrific." But like, does that obligate us as a government to do anything?
Well, when we're talking about the state and we're talking about the power to tax, essentially coercively take money from the population, no, I think the only obligation that the state has in that aspect is to protect the citizens of the nation that it's taking that money from. I don't think we have the right to tax someone, and we're taxing everybody, by the way. If you use money, you're being taxed. If you use dollars, you're being taxed. The Federal Reserve is manipulating the value of that dollar. It's disintegrating the value of that dollar over time. So even the poorest of people in this country are paying to go fight wars in Syria. That makes no sense to me. When you were talking about how we have homeless people in this country, how we have so many problems here and there with income gaps and wage gaps and all these issues, and yet we're going to tax all these people that we're worried about, steal from them, steal from their earning power, and go use it for wars that may or may not be. When you talk about the baby in Aleppo, I mean, that was used to sort of, I guess, tell people we should go to war. I mean, I think ultimately that's why these images are put on TV. What they never tell you is, why is that? What happened to that baby? Who started this conflict? Was it Assad? Was it rebel groups? I'm not saying there's an easy answer, especially in Syria. It is a very complicated situation. The fact is, we often don't know what's causing the terrible images that we see on TV. We talk about a chemical attack. I mean, Seymour Hersh, and to me, one of the most credible journalists alive, put out an article shortly after that attack in 2013 that it was conclusively not from the Assad government. We almost went to war over that. With the Syria over that specific attack. It's now universally known to not be true. So, I mean, this is one example of not having the right information anyway. But information aside, I don't think a government necessarily has the right to tax all of its citizens for the purpose of protecting every citizen in the world. That's not moral, practical, or reasonable, as far as I'm concerned.
Presumably in our republic system, though, if our representatives whom we've elected vote to do something like that, then that would be within the state's power?
Well, okay, there's a different, we have to make some distinctions here. Yeah, within like our constitutional system, that is within the state's power. I still doesn't mean I'm going to think that particular war in any certain case is moral. I don't think these are different conversations.
Well, no. You mentioned something about the state really only. It should tax its own if it's going to tax its own citizens.
I'm not saying it should, but if it's
sorry, that's why I tried to correct myself.
Yeah.
If it taxes its own people, then its obligation is to protect the people whom it taxes.
I'd say at a maximum, its obligation would be to fight defensive battles when there are true, actual invasions. I mean, even after 9/11, I certainly wouldn't say we shouldn't try to get the people that did that. That's not at all what any of the missions that preceded that act were. But I mean, I'm not against that theory, that concept of bringing people to justice. Again, whether it's the guy who stole Granny's oranges or the guys that knocked down towers.
The story gets more entertaining the more hypothetical it
And yeah, but it is very difficult to extrapolate a lot of, I think, any philosophy really into real world scenarios, because the real world scenario is not based on a starting point that is in tune with the philosophy, whether it's libertarianism or Marxism or whatever.
It would be helpful if people were. It'd be helpful if people were just a lot more evil. Because then it'd be a lot easier to be like, that guy just did a lot of really bad stuff and has no redeeming qualities. We need to take him out.
Yeah, we'll get into identity politics here in a minute. But, John, I want you to weigh in on this.
That was a great segue. Gosh.
Fucking little peanut
John,
moderator
as the Trump supporter, what are your thoughts on this? I see you grinning like a
I was just
like a jackass.
Mark was talking about the Federal Reserve, and I was just over here like, oh yes, somebody finally. No, I think it's very difficult.
I thought those were sarcastic grins.
No, absolutely not. I agree with you 100%. But no, I think when it comes to foreign policy, it's obviously very difficult. But you guys brought up the false information, and we've just been led down this path so many times. I mean, we look at
every time,
right? Like we look at our reason for going into Iraq, and guaranteed WMDs there. I think we were all under the impression. I was very young then, but we were all under the impression when we went in that it was almost as if Saddam was immediately nuclear capable, and we had to go. And we're seeing that over and over and over. And I saw that picture, and same thing. Like my heart went, wow, this is really tragic. But the question is,
it worked.
So does our involvement stop the conflict? And you look at places like Afghanistan, like we've spent thousands of lives, billions of dollars, and is it better now? I mean, you still have warlords and elements of the Taliban, and you still have terrorist sects there. I think that's if you're going to go to war, you need to have a clear objective, a clear path to victory, and a clear exit strategy. And we just don't seem to ever have any of those things, which is my problem with some of our recent conflicts.
Well, what's our path to victory on a war on terror? Exactly.
I mean, that's a good question. Like, how do you combat an ideology?
When there's no more terror.
When everybody's good, this war will be over.
That's ultimately
finally.
the only answer that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you beat terror and it comes out with a white flag, it's like, all right, no more of this. Only love and fun now.
I will say that Trump's recent remarks on what he wanted to do in Afghanistan were different than what we've heard in the past. I mean, like, he was very much straight up like, we're not going there to install a new government in Afghanistan. We're going over there to kill people.
Oh, yeah, he did that.
Right. No, I think one of the things I liked about him was that he was willing to, in a Republican primary, take the risk of saying, we don't need to be nation building. We don't need to be going into all of these wars. And it turned out to be kind of a popular thing. And now he's president, and he's still, at least in my opinion, and Mark, you might disagree with me a little bit, but I still think he's putting foreign policy in a much better direction than it was the last 16 years, personally.
Mark? You were addressed in that last comment,
so
I'll give you a minute to respond.
I was thinking of responding, but I can't say it's measurably worse yet. No, I mean, except for one thing.
It's a low bar.
It's actually a little more than a small thing. Civilian deaths in Iraq and Yemen and a lot of countries. I mean, I include Yemen. We're not there, but drones are, and we're giving money to Saudi Arabia, and they're bombing Yemen. So I include all this together. Civilian deaths are higher than ever. So I'm not going to really say that.
No, that's fair.
That makes things. That's better. Right. But in terms of like getting involved in even more conflicts, like no, he hasn't done that yet. I guess because we're already involved in so many, it would be hard to add more to it. I can't say I'm disappointed with his Afghanistan statements because it's not like I thought he was going to announce a withdrawal as much as I might have just loved to dream that was going to be a Trumpian swerve. I think that's the only reasonable action in Afghanistan is complete withdrawal. When it's wrong to start something, it's probably wrong to continue doing it. And the fact of the matter, when it comes to Afghanistan, the Taliban was our friend until literally 2 months before Afghanistan. And they actually offered to hand over Osama bin Laden several times. And every time we kept raising the bar and saying, no, because the goal was always to go to war there for whatever reason. And people, I'm not saying I have a conspiracy why, but there are other people out there who do have reasons out there.
We sure do.
And yeah, so I don't know if Trump is worse. I don't think he's worse for reasons that other people, that the left seems to think. And I hate to generalize the left. I'm just saying it because I'm actually just being a trained dog at this point and calling people what other people call them. But a lot of the opposition, I should say, a lot of the opposition to Trump seems most upset about, like, to me, stuff that's silly. Like, oh, he pushed the one president aside for the photograph at NATO, and like it's superficial stuff. It's more about his style and even the stuff with Kim Jong Un in North Korea and his stances and his language. If you go back and look at Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, every single one of them had the same literally the same language, except they didn't say fire and fury. They just said, we're going to destroy your country. Your country will be gone. It's the same kind of violence language, really. They just don't have the same Trump style, and we didn't associate them, maybe Bush eventually, but with the same kind of sort of tyrant-like figure. A lot of people come into seeing Trump as a tyrant already, as a crazy person already. So when you take that persona and that image in your mind and add the same language that every other president was saying before him, well, suddenly it takes on a whole new meaning. It gets a lot more attention. Yeah, it gets confirmation, and it gets a lot more attention. It gets played over and over and over and over.
I didn't think I'd ever say this, but dare I say that Trump is just more poetic with the fire and fury and the alliteration.
You said it, not me. I mean, he has a way with words, and I'm not saying it's a good way or a bad way, but it is a way, and I think that's a way. I think that's where he gets underestimated a lot. I think that's where his critics and his opponents do a big disservice, not just to him, to themselves, by acting like. Even now that he actually became president, still just acting like he's a big buffoon that just stumbled his way into office and has no idea what he's doing. I mean, anybody that goes in and tries to oppose Trump with this attitude is gonna, I think, regret it, because it shows that you're really not learning a lesson at all, and you're really underestimating. I'm not talking about you, by the way. I'm talking about the left or the other opposition, and I think they really don't take him seriously enough, much to their own detriment, because I think he is a lot smarter than people give him credit for.
I think, I don't know about the smarter than people give him credit for, but I think that your point about learning a lesson, I mean, it's insane to me that, like, the sort of CNN sorts or the sort of Facebook liberals are still doing the same things they were doing during the campaign, and it's like, guys, like,
all four of us are nodding our heads right now for the people at home. So I'm glad we agree on that.
Like, we meaning the non-Trump people, like, we got our asses handed to us. I mean, you got to reevaluate the way that you are conducting yourself when you're talking to people, and I mean, it feels very like second grade of me. But one of the things that I really committed to doing was, if I ever wanted to engage someone, usually on like local politics Facebook page, like local news Facebook pages, I always start with like, I'm really interested in hearing, like, I have like a set preamble that I could almost copy and paste for, like, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about this. What about this sort of thing? Would you have the same reaction? I'm not trying to start a fight. I really am just interested in learning more about what your opinion is. Like, there's probably like 3 times the amount of words coaxing them into having a conversation than actual substance of what I'm asking. But calling people names and having like these like hysterical reactions to people that you don't agree with clearly doesn't work in terms of like winning people over to your side. So that's
this is from the Democrat, everybody, just so you know who's talking right now.
No, that was that.
Sorry.
It is possible.
That's really true. Like, I mean, I think, and I'm oh, sorry, Mark. I'm really guilty.
No, go ahead.
I'm guilty of this. I mean, all the time. I'm very aggressive.
That's what I was going to say too. So.
With my language, and depending on the person and whether I have a previous relation with them, I'll be incredibly dismissive and sarcastic. But like Ryan, what you're talking about, where you introduce yourself and kind of like. It's a way of like waving, not like saying, "Hey, I want to have a conversation." Like, I'm not just trying to like get you.
Yes, I respect what you're going to respond with.
That
I'm not
is
just
so
looking for a
important.
debate.
And like when I interact with people on Facebook, I have a lot of liberal friends, and sometimes they'll come in with the sarcasm, and I just don't want to deal with it. But like when someone comes in, like what you just said, where you're just like, "Hey, look, I disagree with you, but I just want to see where you're coming from. Let's have a conversation about this." I always give them the time of day. I wish more people would do that, because and that's me included, because that's our problem as a country right now. We are so intent on vilifying and demonizing our opponents that we just can't even like see where we're coming from. And because
it's sad when
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's sad when we have to like announce our intentions in a dialogue are honest ahead of time now, because the default is obviously you're not.
Well, yeah, no, and that's why
I'm not a Nazi. Let's talk.
Yeah, it's like, I know what you're thinking, but I actually am trying to have a conversation here. Like, you do have to say that now to, like, even get in with anybody.
It's absolutely insane. That's why I said it sounds so second grade. It sounds so, like, 6th grade health book when you learned how to communicate effectively. But, like, it really is what it's come to. Like, the default is they're trying to set me up for a gotcha moment.
Right.
But, like, what if we don't do that? What if we're not trying to get each other?
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
It's very rare.
Yeah, it is rare, and I managed to
It's literally why we're here.
3 people that are willing to do that. Amazing, this time in life. Yeah, so that kind of
the
gets...
second half of the show is where we just read memes at each other, though, right? I have a whole list here, and... No? All right.
Sounds good. Only if you start with Nicholas Sarwark memes and go from there. All right. So
Inside jokes.
Yep. Nobody else cares about. So, I mean, that kind of segues well into. Well, first of all, I don't want to draw this out too much further because we've all kind of given the basic rundown. But, I mean, we've set aside foreign policy a little bit, but Trump in general, like accepting the fact that he is our president and assuming that nobody's going to kill him. All these hot button issues aside.
Whoa. I disclaim myself.
I disavow.
I said, I'm assuming that nobody is going to kill him. I'm assuming they won't be successful. Anyway, so assuming all those things aside, Trump, just in general, we'll start with Ryan as the most opposed. Thoughts?
What do you want to know?
Just
him as a person?
Just him so far as your president.
He is my president. I very much disavowed the people who said the "not my president," and basically I said, y'all sound just like the people from the South who are saying Obama's not my president.
Y'all.
Yeah, you're right. But no, like,
Well, you got to talk your language to them. Hey, y'all.
I gotta get on their level. That's so condescending. I'm so sorry. But no, like, I really do feel like that is important. Like, no, he is our president. He won the election by the rules that we have. He is the president. You sound just like the people who said Obama's not their president. Like, you're literally saying the same thing.
Right.
What do I think of him? Okay, I follow him on Facebook, and what really annoys me, what annoys me the most,
he never
is when I
responds to
see,
me.
What annoys me the most is when I don't want policy being announced via Twitter, and B, like, stop just trying to say everything's going great in the White House when, like, there's, like, clearly falling
Fake
apart
news.
constantly.
Fake news.
I really do find him to be, like, and it's obviously it's not him. It's really the machine we're talking about. It's not necessarily him as a person, right?
I was going to say, every president always says everything's going great.
Right.
Trump just does it in the Trumpian, with the Trumpian, whatever you want to call it.
He just says it
flair, I guess.
louder
I
and
don't
more
know.
often.
Yes, exactly.
I guess I haven't really seen much to hugely. I mean, the what has he done recently? The trans thing for the military. Didn't think that was much of a problem. He seems like he goes out of it. I mean, he referred to Chelsea Manning as a he the other day. Those sorts of things, like, that's not the sort of thing that's going to get me all riled up. But it's kind of like,
And he does it intentionally. It's
well, yeah,
he
and that's
chose to
the
say
thing.
he.
It's like
not like a slip, and he did it because he wants that response. It's part of his.
Yeah, it just feels like a circus. At the beginning, I said I'd like a certain level of sophistication and sincerity out of him. I mean, I try to hold myself in, like, my own side to the same thing. I mean, the criticisms of Melania wearing heels into Air Force One, like, really, I don't feel that much. He took us out of the TPP. That was I guess potentially okay, probably good. I don't know. I really just I'm waiting. I guess I'm actually really interested to see how our new Afghanistan policy turns out.
Sure.
I'm most intrigued by that. I'm very intrigued by the fact that he straight up said we are going over there to kill the bad guys.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
go ahead and define. have fun defining bad guys. But, like,
That's the
I'm
problem.
very
They're all bad
intrigued
guys.
by that.
Our friends are the bad guys.
Yeah.
We're the bad guys
But
sometimes too.
I'm intrigued by that. I guess I just don't really take him that seriously. I think that's my problem. I just don't really take him that seriously.
Sure.
That's actually the right attitude.
Not really that much chance. Yeah.
No, I
Go ahead,
think
Mark.
that's a problem that so many people have. Is taking who the president is as. I'm not saying it doesn't affect our lives in any way, but I have some people I work with now who, I love them dearly, but I walk in and the first thing they do, I don't ever have TVs on. The first thing I do is turn on the TV, turn on CNN, and keep on CNN all day. And it's like an 8-hour hate. They proclaim to hate Donald Trump so much, and they get emotional about it, but they can't stop watching this network that only shows them Donald Trump all day, and it's like it consumes their lives. And there are many, 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 many valid criticisms of Donald Trump. I've never heard one of them from them. It's a generic hate, and it's a very strange phenomenon that has cropped up. And a lot of the population anyway. It's not everybody. It's not even everybody from the other side, obviously. But I think there's a certain amount of people that actually, at some point through all the campaign, hoopla and the portraying of Trump, and he's not part of it in some way, but as basically nothing more than a racist and someone who just generically hates Mexicans or black people or Jews, none of which really fully makes sense, that America actually became more racist than it was the day before, and he is the representative of that. And that really seems to be what is just this kind of like demon that is living inside people now. I'm not saying I am actually saying there's very little, if any, reality to it. But regardless, it shouldn't affect anybody's lives to this extent. And it's not affecting their lives. Sure. It's affecting their lives because they choose it to. They choose to be, in the muck all day. Whereas, I know who Trump is. I know what he does generally, but the second I'm away from them, I don't watch CNN or even think about it beyond, preparing for my podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I will say I vehemently and passionately disagree with his pardon of that sheriff from Maricopa County.
Joe Arpaio.
I kind of don't get why one human ever has that power, actually. But I say that now, but I actually am a big fan of a lot of Obama's pardons of people that were in jail for 20 or 30 years for selling drugs, many of which were actually very minor amounts, if any. A lot of them have been interviewed on one of our shows, and I can tell you a lot of these people are people that broke the law, made mistakes, and never hurt a person ever. So I'm not going to say when the power is applied for good, I think it's, I'm not going to object to it. But why does any one person, why do we just decide president can just, declare anyone is fine, like no matter what they did? I mean, it's
a very weird remnant of English law.
It's a monarchical
especially
power,
especially considering how much we tried to distance ourselves from
England. One they held on to. From all accounts, Arpaio seems like a total scumbag to me. So I'm not a fan of it either, though.
So John, weigh in. You're the Trump guy.
So I didn't support Donald Trump during the primary. I really liked Marco Rubio, and it took me a while. But the more I heard from him, I agreed with him on a lot of different policies that he disagreed with the Republican Party on. I'm just not this corporate Republican guy. I really held my nose to vote for Mitt Romney. I just don't really care about corporations as much as I care about people. So some of his economic messaging really appealed to me. And Ryan, I'm sure it at least a little bit appealed to you too, on trade and on wages and these types of things. But what ended up happening, Rubio obviously lost. He got wrecked. And I just started to watch him, and I think my biggest issue with Trump was that I didn't trust him as a conservative. I really felt that, he was a Northeastern liberal who had said a lot of things Northeastern liberals had said in the past, and I didn't necessarily trust that he would advocate for conservatives. But he's, I work with a lot of conservative groups in D.C. and with the people on his campaign team and now administration, and he came through on a lot of the things we asked for. And
name a couple.
Okay, no, on the abortion issue, which I'm sure we can discuss, but by far more than any Republican candidate ever came out with specific what he would do on pro-life stuff. He attacked Hillary Clinton on late-term abortion in the debate. No Republican, the typical Republican thing on pro-life things has been like, okay, you guys vote for us, we're pro-life, and that's it. That's all they do. Right. They weren't willing to, really do anything on it. And he showed, I think he understood that he needed a. I don't want to go on a long tangent about this, but sure. I think he understood that he needed a coalition of socially conservative working class voters and anti-government people, populist economics, that type of thing, and it was the only way he was going to win. We were talking right before Trump won about whether Republicans, if they would ever win the presidency again, if the demographics were against them, and I think a Mitt Romney-style candidate, a corporate-loving Republican that kind of discards social conservatives, was never ever going to win the presidency.
A Jeb Bush.
Or Jeb, who I opposed.
Be nice
aggressively.
Low energy Jeb.
Oh,
please clap.
Low energy.
Please clap.
That was the best moment of 2016 politics.
Yes.
It's something.
2016 anything.
I do want to say though, I honestly do love the guy. I love Trump. I think he has a lot of flaws. He's not a typical politician in that typically a politician will really weigh their comments and lie to you, where he's just like whatever's on his mind, which I think is actually a benefit. But I mean, there are some criticisms I have. I mean, I think that, going into this, I was very vocal about Republicans having a 2-year window to really succeed in implementing their agenda. I really want them to do that, and it's been a complete what's a synonym for clusterfuck?
Could just be clusterfuck.
That's what it's been.
Either way, I'm editing it out.
And that's been very frustrating. I mean,
hot mess.
You look at the healthcare ordeal, which I think most Republicans, there was really good pro-life language in there, which I liked, but generally the AHCA was just another version of Obamacare. I mean, it was the same type of government is in charge of healthcare, prices are going to continue to go up. So that was disappointing. He did come out with a plan for tax reform. I really want to see that done. But again, this is where, as much as I love him attacking the media and attacking liberals and just being campaign Trump, I'm just watching the clock, And I mean, it's September when this airs. Sure. And we haven't really accomplished a whole lot yet. And that is outside of Neil Gorsuch, which I guess I can just hang my hat on. But I mean, that's it, So that's frustrating.
So yeah, kind of for me as a moderator, what I'm getting from all of you is, I don't know. I mean,
is that what you're getting from all of us?
That's not great. That's okay. Yeah. Everybody's just kind of like, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is for any president. But for some reason, we are all under the impression that he's destroying the world.
And we always want to put we always want to act like, I mean, it's not Trump's fault that the healthcare thing sucked.
Yeah.
It's the Republican Party's fault that the healthcare thing sucked. I mean, politically, that was really embarrassing. They whined for 8 years about it, and they couldn't do anything about it. They have everything. They have everything right now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I mean, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, that's not really Trump's fault. Trump's actually been the one being like, guys, if you don't fucking do this, I'm shutting this shit down. I mean, you can't really blame that on Trump. At the end of the day, the
Republicans are paid. Are a lot of them are owned by the same people that own the people that wrote Obamacare, which largely benefits the largest insurers and pharmaceutical companies, and they are not about to lose that paycheck. So they were never going to totally dismantle this system that's been set up for them.
And that's another reason why the base is upset. But I will play counterpoint on that, Ryan, which is actually really funny because you're defending Trump and I'm not. But on the healthcare bill thing, when you look at the way Barack Obama led on that issue in 2009, 2010, and really made it a key part of his presidency, and he was out there personally whipping the votes and campaigning for healthcare all across the United States, Donald Trump didn't do that. To be fair, I mean, he tweeted about it.
I have theories about
and
this.
Was passive aggressive. Go ahead.
I don't think he wanted this thing to pass. The actual Trump care that was proposed. I think he knew that he wasn't going to get more than that, and he also knew that he wasn't. I mean, it's a disaster. The Trump care would be just more of a disaster, right. And I don't think he's dumb enough to actually want his name on the final product that was proposed. But I also think he wanted to show that he was trying to repeal Obamacare. And I think this is the result. I think he wanted to make some people look stupid, and he wanted the egg to be on the face of some Republicans instead of him.
That is very possible. I mean, I don't know if you guys looked at the key aspects of the bill, but it was really awful. We're talking about changing, I don't want to get too wonkish, but they were changing the subsidies into tax credits that expire. So you would get, as a 20-something, I would get $2,000 for my health care. Yeah, exactly. So I have a year to use it. If I have $2,000 in a year to use it, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy health insurance. And then what are insurance companies going to do? They're going to raise prices. And it's how is that helpful at all? I was more on board with it when it was not expiring. And then somehow the expiration got worked into there secretly. And then it was there. And it was just awful policy.
Well, healthcare is a very boring topic, so I don't want to linger here. Let's talk about something fun like identity politics. Who wants to start?
4 white guys talk about identity politics. Tune in to find out what happens.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I thought it was a fantastic discussion, and again, I think the second half is probably even better, and we get a little bit more touchy and a little bit more into some of these hot button topics that I think that you guys will enjoy Mark and John and Ryan's opinions on. It's very interesting. Again, that's going to be coming out next week. Until then, as always, if you could go to iTunes and subscribe to the show and give it a nice review, that would be fantastic. Also, if you could go to facebook.com/The System Is Down and give us a like there and share it and all that fun stuff. And you can find us on Twitter at the handle TSIDpod. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you want to join in the discussions, we have an open forum for anybody that wants to weigh in on some of these topics and give their own opinions. You can find that by going to tsidpod.com/forum and just let us know what you think. You're welcome to come in and rant and tell me how bad of a job I'm doing, or that you don't like the fact that I give too long of outros at the end of the show, or that I promote my stuff too heavily, or whatever you want. But thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back here next Monday, first thing, to wrap up this conversation. And until then, question everything and stay uncomfortable. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.